All right, we'll move on now to question number 2. We'll start with Mr. Frank Pendleton with this one and then go down the line. Mr. Pendleton, how should Leland address stormwater and flooding concerns as development continues? You have 1.5 minutes to answer.
That's a good question, and we've all faced that. I live in Brunswick Forest, and our lot, when we bought our lot, we checked on it several times before we built our house. And not only did it hold water, it was underwater. So I wound up having to put French drains all over the property just to drain it out so we could walk across the grass. You know, it's amazing to me. We continually grant permits to build in flood zones, and then we act surprised when it floods. Doesn't make sense to me. But to me, the bigger issue is when you look at the stormwater, is what happens to the stormwater drainage. You know, we're gonna build in flood zones, but we've gotta be concerned about what happens to the storm drainage water. And I don't think that we've taken a lot of that in consideration. We're seeing flooding now, we're seeing the streets flooding. A real issue when, you know, being from Florida, we dealt with hurricanes. And in North Carolina, we've seen several of these pass off our coast. We don't have proper evacuation routes for the hurricanes. These roads are gonna flood, and we need to make plans for that now.
Thank you, sir. We'll move on now to Ms. Waleed. Ms. Waleed, the question is, how should Leland address stormwater and flooding concerns as development continues?
Okay, we have a lot of building going on, and we have a lot of the environment being destroyed by building. The trees and the bushes help with stormwaters and for the soil to retain the stormwaters. So we need to address that. Also, we're going to need more storm drains to absorb the water going forward. So I'm still looking at environmental encroachment and encroaching on a lot of the forestry. It is what is causing a lot of the places to flood, and that issue is going to have to be addressed. And stop tearing up these trees and bushes because they're not able to do their job and absorb the water that comes from the storms.
Thank you, ma'am. All right, we'll move on now to Mr. Leland Heyer. Mr. Heyer, how should Leland address stormwater and flooding concerns as development continues?
A couple of things about this. Number one, I think that we need to use the most recent maps available. We don't need to rely on the federal government to tell us where the floodplain is. We know where the floodplain is. The other thing I'll tell you is FEMA cannot save us all. When I'm looking at this group of, we are the oldest by median age county in the state. We may not be able to evacuate as quickly as other counties. I really want to make sure that we have the absolute best disaster professionals in the country working in Brunswick County and in the town of Leland.
Thank you, sir. We'll move on now to Mr. Bill McHugh. Mr. McHugh, how should Leland address stormwater and flooding concerns as development continues?
You know, I asked myself this question several times throughout my first term, and I finally came up with a solution that I believe is right last summer. The city of Raleigh has an ordinance that essentially eliminates the development of residential homes in flood zones. So I sought to have an ordinance like that brought to the town of Leland. After some legal research and some additional research, we narrowed it down to an ordinance that would do 4 things. It would add the 500-year flood zone to the 100-year flood zone. It would increase the freeboard requirement from 2 feet to 4 feet. It would ban the use of structural fill, which is where you fill in dirt to lift yourself out of the flood zone. Because when you fill a flood zone with dirt, you don't get rid of the water, you just push it to your neighbors. And the 4th item was going to reduce maximum density to 2 units per acre to limit exposure for our first responders and the folks that live there if they choose to live in a flood zone. It passed the planning board unanimously. It came before the council and was tabled by a vote of 3-2 over my objection due to heavy pushback from development and concerns about lawsuits. So what I'm hoping today is that you'll give me another opportunity to take a swing at this thing, and that one of these people at this table will join me in that and drag this across the finish line, because we must protect our vulnerable areas. As to stormwater, we have current plans to expand the stormwater infrastructure under Low Country Boulevard in Brunswick Forest. Our stormwater ordinances in the town of Leland are modeled after the state and in many ways are stronger, and we're still researching ways to make them better. So that's the next step for stormwater as well.
Please hold your applause, everybody. Thank you. I want to give a quick shout out to.
You actually only might close the program.
Yes, sir. Would you like to test real quick, Mr. Lee?
Testing, testing.
How's
Can you
that?
hear that? Can you hear it? Testing, testing. You can hear it now? Okay.
All right, awesome. And audio sounds good on everyone else? Yes! Okay, awesome. All right. I also want to give a quick shout out to everyone I see in the crowd taking notes. My God, this is not for a grade. All right. We'll move on to question number 3, and let's see, we started with you, so we'll start with Ms. Waleed. Question number 3 is, open burning is still used in Brunswick County for yard waste and land clearing. What specific steps would you take to reduce the environmental and health impacts of open burning in Leland? You have 1.5 minutes.
Okay, they have done some resolving of open burning with the apron curtain burning, which are those machines that allow less smoke to go up into the air. However, those who have respiratory issues are still suffering from burning. I'm not understanding why we can't chip the wood and it could be donated to Habitat for Humanity, it can be donated for dog beds, it can be donated to make homes if the wood is in good condition. So I would like to see less open burning and them making more use of the wood that they're tearing down.
Thank you, ma'am. We'll move on now to Mr. Leland Heyer. Mr. Heyer, what specific steps would you take to reduce the environmental and health impacts of open burning in Leland?
So the first thing I'll tell you is that I would welcome the opportunity to vote for an open burning ban in the town of Leland. I think it's that simple. I hear from everybody that, well, we can't do it unless we offer vegetative waste pickup. We can't do it unless we offer an alternative. I understand. I think when I ask people in Atlanta suburbs, home builders, developers about burning, they have not been able to burn since the 1970s. This is something that I don't know how this has lasted an additional 50 years in North Carolina. Just very simple. I would welcome the opportunity to vote on a ban on open burning. Let's do it and see where we go.
Thank you, sir. We'll move on now to Mr. Bill McHugh. Mr. McHugh, what specific steps would you take to reduce the environmental and health impacts of open burning in Leland?
Well, thank you for that, Mr. Heyer, because if elected, you may have that opportunity. Starting over the summer, several people came to us from the Brunswick Forest area and presented us a unique problem. Lots and lots and lots of land clearing burning happening piecemeal on a massive tract that's going to be cleared for God knows how long. So this problem went from a problem and a nuisance to an epidemic essentially overnight. A few years ago, the council had a discussion about this. We talked about those issues that were just highlighted, about having to offer debris pickup. And the biggest problem was that none of the burning at the time was in our jurisdiction. So we just sort of moved on and hoped we would find a solution later. That was a mistake and we're not gonna make it again. So I put on the agenda over the summer an additional discussion on open burning. And my goal was to find a way to regulate land clearing for development burning, not all burning, because that may not require all those additional steps and services. So that's what we're researching right now, and the goal is to have a workshop on that next month. The date should be announced soon. When it is, I encourage you all to attend, because the goal from that is to figure out what we can do and draft something and put it together so that when we get to this new council in the new year, we have the ability to vote on it and end this practice. It should have been ended 50 years ago. I swear, if I had $1 for every time I said that about a development practice in North Carolina since I've been on the council, I would have retired and not run for re-election. But this is one I think we can address, and this is one we will address in the next year.
Thank you, sir. We'll move on now, last but not least, Mr. Frank Pendleton. Mr. Pendleton, what specific steps would you take to reduce the environmental and health impacts of open burning in Leland?
I want to come out and say, I'm against the open burning, and I've been against it from the very beginning. Where we live, we smell that smoke. We smell it, we see the ash on our house, we see the ash on our cars, and we've been talking to a wall. And what amazes me, I commend the council for taking the initiative to now, at election time, put together a meeting to examine the open burning. But they've been building homes in Brunswick Forest since 2006. They didn't just start building in the last few months. This is an issue that's been happening for a few months or a few years. This has been happening for a long time, and it's been ignored. I think there's certain things that the council can do that's within their responsibilities, that they can pass the measures to hold these developers accountable. Some of this stuff is gonna be outside the control of the council. It's gonna be handled more by the state. But instead of the council simply coming back and saying, we can't do that, I think the council has a responsibility to the community to hear what these issues are and then tell them what we can do to fight this together. We had a big community outcry when we attempted to raise the taxes by 70% out last year, and the community spoke up and they didn't like it. We've been hearing this burning issue for years. The council has an obligation to work with the people to resolve it.
Thank you, Mr. Pendleton. We'll move on to question 4, and I believe we begin with Mr. Heyer once again. So, Mr. Leland Heyer, how would you ensure that infrastructure keeps pace with population growth? You have 1.5 minutes, sir.
Nikolai, I think this probably is exactly the biggest job that the council is going to have over the next 4 years. And I think there are 2 answers. I don't think that the council has that much control over infrastructure, though they may. I think it's an advocacy role for the people that live here. I'm concerned that we are growing so quickly. I'm concerned that we are growing so quickly that we will stretch our infrastructure to the breaking point. I understand that NCDOT controls roads. I understand that there are other entities that have an effect on what's going to happen with our infrastructure. This is where I think the role of advocacy and having the loudest voice in the room for the citizens of Leland comes into play. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. We'll move on now to Mr. Bill McHugh. Mr. McHugh, how would you ensure that infrastructure keeps pace with population growth?
Sure, so there's 2 phases to this. The first is making sure that we keep pace with the infrastructure, and the second is making sure that we take care of our infrastructure. So to address taking care of it, in the past year, the council passed a 5% resurfacing plan for the roads, where 5% of Leland's more than 100 miles of road are resurfaced every year on a 20-year life cycle to ensure we always have high-quality roads and we're never left trying to repair 100 miles all at the same time. The second thing we've done is we've accepted that there are roads that are controlled by NCDOT, 17, 74, 76, Landvale, 133, et cetera, that it's going to take a long time for the DOT to address those, right? Those guys run out of money every year in August. So what we've focused on is road connectivity. We've worked on building connections between all of our neighborhoods and all of the developments to ensure that if you are on either side of those major highways, that you can get anywhere throughout that community without having to drive on one of those major highways. That's the simplest and most effective way for a local government to address this, is to find ways to pull traffic off of those roads. As far as advocating for NCDOT, if anybody's been paying attention, they've heard I've been quite loud about the attempt to charge the people of Leland a toll for the replacement of the Cape Fear Memorial Bridge. It would be the first time in the history of the state of North Carolina that a piece of existing critical infrastructure was replaced with a toll. We cannot be the guinea pig. We have to keep fighting back on this, and I think if we can win that fight, we can start winning some more and start getting us some attention on these other roads like 17 and 133.
Thank you, sir. Also, this has been bugging me. Can everyone hear him? No? Could you maybe move your microphone? Do a quick check?
How about now?
Thank you, everybody. All right, we'll move on now to Mr. Frank Pendleton. Mr. Pendleton, how would you ensure that infrastructure keeps pace with population growth in Leland?
Well, you know, when you look at Leland, and you go back in 2010, I read some numbers, the population of Leland was around 13,000 people. And then if you flash forward to 2025, then you're looking at about 24,000 people. Right now, it's 2025, we have almost 35,000 people that live here in Leland. And I think it's almost irresponsible from a council standpoint to continually grant permits and continually build, and not take in consideration not only the infrastructure, but the people that are already here. I think the council has a responsibility to take care of the citizens and the voters that are already here before worrying about building more. I think before you grant those permits, you do traffic studies, you do flood zone studies, you do impact studies to determine what the impact of this development is gonna be. You've gotta look at your infrastructure from a fire and a police standpoint. We can grant permits all day long and we can build, but it's gonna increase the cost. And we all know that annexing land and increasing the population does not necessarily reduce our taxes, contrary to popular belief.
Thank you, Mr. Pendleton. We'll move on now to Ms. Waleed. Ms. Waleed, how would you ensure that infrastructure keeps pace with population growth?
Okay, we can all agree that overdevelopment is not helping the community and is contributing to our infrastructure, which is very, very strained right now. And resurfacing streets is not gonna help with infrastructure. Also, perhaps we can get some of these developers to try to figure out a different way for these people to get out of these developments where they don't have to come onto Route 17. They can go a different route out of that development, which will help with traffic. But NCDOT is working on solutions, but that's gonna take time and that's gonna take years. And we have a problem right now with these roads and the traffic and the accidents. And I don't know what we're gonna do about it. They're trying to go to a 6-lane highway, but again, that is gonna take years to solve it. And we have a real problem with our strained infrastructure.
Thank you, ma'am. We'll move on now to the next question. What role should the town play in supporting affordable housing and workforce retention? Mr. Bill DeCue, I believe you begin this round. You have 1.5 minutes, sir.
So for affordable housing, I look at this in two different ways, right? There's making sure that the people that work here can afford to live here. That's general affordability, whether it's a purchase of a home or the rental of an apartment. We've got to find ways to drive down that cost. The other side of that coin is being able to buy into the market affordably. The crux of the American dream is home ownership. And we've made a lot of great strides over the past couple of years to kind of fill in that missing middle. We've seen an increase in the construction of townhomes, which are a more affordable entry point. We've seen an increase in a variety of rental options, which starts to shift your families into homes, which opens up more apartments for your younger people who are looking for somewhere to live. And I believe that that has slowed down the increase in the cost of those rents. There's a lot more to do. What I would like to see us do over the next few years is work with these affordable housing developers that get federal grants that come in and build housing that is rented out then at 40, 60, or 80% of the median income. We've had some discussions with those folks over the past couple of years, but none of it has come to fruition. They've not qualified or they've bowed out for some other reason. And then this plays into workforce retention as well. One of the great challenges we face with attracting businesses is they tell us we don't have a workforce. We don't have a workforce because everyone turns 18 and leaves because we can't attract businesses and there's no jobs for them. So Brunswick County's doing a great job on workforce development with Brunswick County Community College. We need to get somebody to go first. We brought Cygnus Technologies here. We need more life science, we need more biotech, we need more high-end manufacturing.
Thank you, sir. We'll move on now to Mr. Pendleton. Mr. Pendleton, what role should the town play in supporting affordable housing and workforce retention?
I think affordable housing is an important issue. And I think it's all something that we should all look at and be concerned about. But again, I circle back to a point I made a moment ago. You can't develop affordable housing at the expense of the residents who are already here. We're continuing to develop and overdevelop, and we already talked about taxing our infrastructures and our roads. When we start bringing in more and more affordable housing, then you're bringing in more people on the roads, you're bringing in more cars. We can't support the people that are already here. So I think we have to look to bring in some light manufacturing. We have to look to bring in some companies that are going to offer some sustainable business opportunities for these people to work. But again, focus on the people that are here. The median age in Brunswick Forest alone is 62.5. These developers did a marvelous job in recruiting these people to come down because they had a nice, slow, southern way of life. Low taxes, access to Wilmington, access to the beaches. We're eroding that away. Many of the people that moved here and have been here less than 10 years said, if I had to do it all over again, under the current circumstances, I may not move to Leland. That breaks my heart. We need to focus on the affordable housing, but we need to focus more on the people that are here.
Thank you, Mr. Pendleton. We'll move on now to Ms. Waleed. Ms. Waleed, what role should the town play in supporting affordable housing and workforce retention?
Well, this town has been talking about affordable housing for years, and we never got it. some of these buildings that are here, these apartments and homes and condos and stuff like that could have been affordable housing. There are people out there who want a better life, better schools for their children, and there's no reason why they could not have gotten that. So, I mean, we are oversaturated right now, but if we had taken care of this years ago, we would have been able to do affordable housing for those who wanted to move into a thriving community, to get better schools and a better life for their children and for themselves.
Thank you, ma'am. We'll move on now to Mr. Leland Hire. What role should the town play in supporting affordable housing and workforce retention?
2 points here. I really feel like the free market is going to take care of this. And the one thing I will say, and my answer here is going to be very short, we do not want the federal government involved in affordable housing anywhere near Leland. They will mess it up and they will have unintended consequences that we will live with for years. Amen.
Thank you, sir. We'll move on now to question number 6, which deals with one of the very first stories I ever covered in Leland, and it was a time for sure. The tax rate for Leland has recently increased from 23.27 cents per $100 valuation for the fiscal year 2024-2025. The rate reflects no change from the current tax rate for 2025-2026. Do you think the annual budget is excessive or optimal? And we'll begin with Mr. Frank Pendleton.
You know, I don't think you can talk about taxes without talking about budgets. I've spent many years going through P&Ls and going through income statements and budgets. And many of the people that I've walked around when I was putting together a platform said, what's your position on taxes? You know, the council attempted to shove a 70% tax increase down our throat just last year. What's your opinion on that? And, you know, before I would look at increasing the taxes and having the taxpayers of this community reach in their back pocket, I'd say let's look at the budget first. Let's look at the budget from a line item standpoint. Let's don't do incremental budgeting that assumes that just because an item's in the budget this year, it ought to be in the budget next year, and oh, by the way, it gets a 10% increase. Let's look at every single line item in that budget, and I bet you there's some frivolous spending that we can eliminate. And if there's enough of that, then we don't have to talk about tax increases.
Thank you, Mr. Pendleton. We'll move on now to Ms. Waleed. Ms. Waleed, do you think the annual budget is excessive or optimal? You have 1.5 minutes, ma'am.
I would say optimal. With the tax increase, these departments should start with a clean slate. The Leland Town Council has done it before. Start with a clean slate, start to eliminate things out of your departments that aren't necessary. That's gonna make the budget less money, no taxes on us. The last budget achieved a lot for the police, EMS, and fire. So those departments right there, we're doing well. So I just think if we start with a clean slate, start eliminating some things that we don't need, that we should be okay.
Thank you, ma'am. We'll move on now to Mr. Leland Hire. Mr. Hire, do you think the annual budget is excessive or optimal?
I think the current level is optimal. I'd rather do anything other than raise taxes. I do not want to vote to raise taxes. This community has PTSD. I underestimated the anger that you have felt about taxes. I hear you. We do not need higher taxes. I would rather do anything next year than vote higher taxes. If you want higher taxes, I'm not your guy. The other thing I'll tell you is we need to be like Snoop Dogg. Mind on my money, money on my mind. We have got to find areas in the county's budget where we can cut things. I am very anxious to pop open the hood and look under the hood at the town's budget.
Thank you so much, sir. We'll move on now to Mr. McHugh. Mr. McHugh, do you think the annual budget is excessive or optimal?
I think we're at a great level right now, and I'd like to maintain it. The people of Leland have made it abundantly clear, and I'll say that there's no one up at this table who heard about it more than me, that they want us to prioritize a low tax rate. I have heard you loud and clear. Right now, there are 23 municipalities in the state of North Carolina that are similar in size to the town of Leland. As of the 2024-2025 fiscal year, only 4 had a lower tax rate. The town of Leland already engages in zero-based budgeting. We don't give anybody what they asked for the previous year. We don't add any additional percentage. Everyone must come back and prove each and every individual cost over again. Excuse me. This is why you see so much variance between departments. Some departments will get a large investment for efficiencies and others won't. The 4 cents that we increased 2 years ago added a police power shift, which doubled our police presence at our busiest time. It didn't just add more officers, it doubled the officers per capita. It added additional firefighters that will keep us at a level 2 ISO rating. We currently have a fire department that's in the top 8% of the state of North Carolina. We'd like to keep it that way. We also added the 5% resurfacing plan, where we resurface and rebuild 5% of Leland's roads every single year. That was what happened on Grand Flora just a few weeks ago. It was an example of that program. And we're going to continue that in perpetuity. That's what that increase was for. And I would like to maintain us right here and continue to find additional sources of revenue like grants. We hired a grant writer, they brought us in millions, and continue lobbying the state and federal governments to give us additional funds.
Thank you, sir. We'll move on now to question number 7. What role should the town play in supporting youth programs, safe routes to school, and civic education? We'll begin right now with Ms. Waleed. Ms. Waleed, you have 1.5 minutes, ma'am.
Yes, we should continue those programs. They're good for the community, they're good for the kids, give them a sense of self, and we should have those programs in school for the children, and hopefully we can continue to do that so that they will have a sense of self and have other activities to do besides hanging out in the streets.
Thank you, ma'am. We'll move on now to Mr. Leland Heyer. Mr. Heyer, what role should the town play in supporting youth programs, safe routes to school, and civic education?
Excuse me. There are 3 things that I would propose if I become a member of the town council. The first is we need a Leadership Leland program so that we have an opportunity to help people under it. How many of you have ever lived in a town that had a Leadership Raleigh or a Leadership Atlanta or another similar leadership program where not only, I see the hands in the back, not only do they talk about the town and the functions of the town, but they talk about issues and what's needed. And it's also a great place to help make sure that you have a group of people who may also assume those leadership positions in the town. We need that. And I think we should have it in partnership with the North Brunswick Chamber of Commerce. The second idea I have is I'd like to have a municipal leadership academy. I think that if you guys haven't noticed, not everybody's going to college these days. Not everybody belongs in college. I work with kids every day. When I start talking to them about going away to UNC or NC State, they go, not so much. They want to get a welding certificate at the local community college. But I think we also can prepare people who are in high school locally to assume roles of leadership in municipal organizations like the town of Leland. It would be an honor to help them go through that program. Maybe it's a year-long program where they shadow a council member or they get the opportunity to come to these meetings, understand, maybe even take an organizational role in them. I'd like to see more community in the town council meetings. The last thing, how many of you know about police and fire exploring groups? They are a function of the Boy Scouts of America. A lot of firemen, a lot of people who work in police departments got their start because they got an opportunity to go along on a ride along with those organizations. We should do that.
Thank you very much, sir. We'll move on now to Mr. Bill McHugh. Mr. McHugh, what role should the town play in supporting youth programs, safe routes to school, and civic education?
I would love to see us play a larger role in that. And recently I had the opportunity to speak to the honors class on leadership at North Brunswick High School. And through that experience, it became very apparent to me that these young people are hungry for these opportunities. And Leland's in a really unique position because we have a brain trust here, the likes of which I've never seen. When I first moved here, I tried to apply for one of the boards and committees, and I was denied, and I was a little disappointed. I asked one of the council members, why didn't I even get an interview? And they said, one of the people we put on that board was an engineer at NASA for 30 years, right? So this would be a great opportunity for some of the folks who have had these backgrounds to come in and work with people. And I think the town of Leland has the opportunity to be that intermediary. We have this beautiful facility with all these great offerings that we have, but we don't have as many for young people, particularly the ones that are in that sensitive age of junior high to high school, where they aren't quite sure where they want to go, what they want to be, and they could really use some guidance. When I decided what I wanted to be when I grew up, I was basing it on what everybody else told me I thought I'd be good at. It wasn't the things that I loved and the things that I could embrace. It never occurred to me that I could choose to become a plumber and open my own plumbing company. I needed to go to law school because that was my destiny. And I think this is an opportunity to bring folks in our community together and get everyone involved.
Thank you, sir. We'll move on now, last but not least, to Mr. Frank Pendleton. Mr. Pendleton, what role should the town play in supporting youth programs, safe routes to school, and civic education?
I think the town should play an active role in that. I think parks and recreation are important for a community. You look to bring the community together through community involvement and youth activities. I was a youth coach for many years. I coached baseball, I coached football, I coached wrestling, and I was involved with kids in our community and my own children. But I think it's important because it gives you an identity and a sense of who you are. I think from a walkability standpoint, a bikeability standpoint, when you look at Leland, we've got a score of 0. This is not a walkable or bikeable community. If you're in Magnolia Green or Waterford, you can navigate through that area. If you're in Brunswick Forest, you can navigate in that area. But there's no crossing 17. There's no bike paths on 17 or 133. And this is an area that I think we should look at because bringing the community together is important. If you look at Belleville, we were at a community event at the Fall Festival for Belleville this past week, the small town of Belleville, our little brother. But yet they've got a park, they've got a central location area where they can bring the community together. Leland doesn't. I think it's important that we do because right now it feels like Leland's still trying to find their own identity.
Thank you, sir. And let's see. Okay, we're in the home stretch, y'all. Question number 8. All right, we will begin with Mr. Leland Heyer. This is the last question, sir. Although the town has implemented a safe streets plan, there are still notable gaps in infrastructure for pedestrians and cyclists, such as you just mentioned, Mr. Pendleton, a lack of safe crossing points on US 17. How would you tackle this problem? You have a minute and a half, sir.
I don't need a minute and a half. That's an NCDOT supervised road, and I think we probably need to work with them to establish safe crossing and bike paths.
Thank you, sir. We'll move on now to Mr. McHugh. Mr. McHugh, how would you tackle the problem of ensuring safe crossing points on US 17 and other places?
So we already worked with NCDOT and received a grant to build a pedestrian crossing on US 17 by Harris Teeter and the Waterford Shopping Center. That should be coming hopefully in the next year. You know, anytime you're dealing with government grants, it's a long and drawn out process, but it has been drawn, it has been planned, it is a shovel-ready project, so we will be moving forward with that. As part of our Safe Streets for All initiative, we're also engaged in a lot of traffic calming initiatives. You might have noticed that Grand Flora is now being striped. There's going to be additional bike lanes throughout the community. We're focusing on sidewalk connectivity as part of our continued connectivity projects. Also, in our zoning ordinances, we require sidewalks on both sides of the street or a large multi-use path. In places like the county, it's only on one, so that's an area where we really strive. If you want to build a neighborhood in the town of Leland, you're going to put a large multi-use path or 2 ADA compliant sidewalks in, or you don't build it. Aside from that, again, it's making sure that we continue to work with our partners at DOT. We tried to get them to widen Landvale when they repaved it, they didn't. But the next time they come through in an area like 133, we need to have a very serious conversation about what they're going to put in for pedestrians, how they're going to help with the Gullah Geechee Heritage Trail, and how they're going to help us move forward into the future.
Thank you, sir. We'll move on now to Mr. Pendleton. Mr. Pendleton, how would you tackle the problem of ensuring good infrastructure for pedestrians and cyclists, such as a lack of safe crossing points on US 17?
First of all, I want to commend the council for finally coming and stepping up and starting to address some of the streets and issues. I rented a house in Magnolia Green before we moved into Brunswick Forest, and the roads on Grand Flora were terrible. I wish they'd had the foresight to think about these bike lanes and these walk lanes 20 years ago, because now that we've got people here, now that we've expanded 17 from a 2-lane road to a multi-lane road, now it's an issue. I think it needs to be addressed. I mean, it's a safety hazard for anyone trying to cross 17 now. We've built all these apartments over by Bloom and Crazy. We've allowed people to not have access to the Walmarts and the Lowe's. They're gonna cross it, they're gonna walk it. So we need to help them do it and do it safely. And when we design roads, I mean, you look at Landville, you look at Village Road, some of these roads, they're good roads that we could ride our bikes on, but you can't. The only place you can ride your bikes on right now are your neighborhood. And otherwise, you're doing it at your own risk. So instead of just saying, we're gonna turn this over to the NCDOT, That's again telling us what we can't do. We don't have control. What we can do is find out what we need to do and empower the people in this room to get together and write your congressman, and let's make this stuff happen. Let's don't kick that can down the road because we can't wait anymore.
Thank you very much, sir. We'll move on now to Ms. Waleed. Ms. Waleed, although the town has implemented a safe streets plan, there are still notable gaps in infrastructure for pedestrians and cyclists, such as a lack of safe crossing points on US 17. Ma'am, how would you tackle this problem?
Okay, first off, I don't know about you, but I don't think I would want to ride a bike on Route 17. Okay, I would say like on Village Road, having bicycle or walking path seems like a feasible solution. I know that their Project 2045 is looking to expand into venues and dining areas and walking paths and bicycle paths, and I can see that. But as far as Route 17 is concerned, no thank you. So that's my response to that.
Thank you, ma'am. All right, y'all, we're gonna move on to closing statements. These are different because each candidate will have 3 minutes to share their final thoughts and their vision for the town of Leland. We'll begin with Mr. Bill McHugh. Sir, you have 3 minutes.
Again, I thank you all for coming. Thank you to the league. Thank you for the candidates up here on stage who had the courage to sit in front of the community and throw their names in the hat for a very, very difficult job. Safe, smart, and sustainable. That's what drove me to run for office in 2021, and that's what I wanted to continue to deliver for the next 4 years. So let's talk a little bit about what we've done in the past and what we're going to do in the future. Safe. We implemented the power shift, doubling the police presence per capita, allowing us to proactively enforce the law, proactively engage the community, and have an actual traffic unit to proactively enforce all the traffic violations we see in Leland. Because God knows we see a lot of illegal right turns on red and a lot of speeding in this community. It's part of Safe Streets for All. It's part of keeping all of us safe and keeping us moving freely throughout traffic. Our fire department was upgraded to Class 2 ISO rating, top 8% in the state. One of the reasons we often brag about getting an upgrade in fire rating is because it reduces your homeowner's insurance. We don't get to do that anymore because it can't get any lower based on your fire rating now that we're in Class 2. We've taken action to invest in additional firefighters to ensure that we can keep that rating in perpetuity. We have added additional stormwater plans for low country to keep your home safe from additional flooding. We've added a buffer zone to keep you safe from additional development. What that buffer zone does is it protects the trees and it requires a vegetative area between every development, and its size varies in intensity, right? So if you're between commercial and residential, it's a much larger buffer. And what we did was we made that buffer zone as strict as we could so that the best way to comply with it was simply to leave the property alone. So the developers won't touch those trees and you'll have some additional canopy left over. Smart. We've updated our zoning. We removed self-storage and warehouse facilities from our commercial 1 and our commercial 2. That means you won't see commercial or self-storage and use storage up and down the commercial corridors of Leland like you see in Wilmington. It's one of the ways we've fought to make our US 17 corridor look more like something Leland can be proud of and look less like Carolina Beach Road in Wilmington. No offense to my Wilmington friends. We've continued to push to conserve commercial space to facilitate commercial development. We had D.R. Horton come in and ask for a conditional rezoning of a very large tract on 133, an area that is already teeming with people and is already completely overbuilt. And we pushed back. I voted against that. I was able to secure the majority, and that development will not be coming on the 133 corridor. Sustainable. Over the past 4 years, the town of Leland, through negotiation, donation, and purchase, has conserved about 1,000 acres of undeveloped property, and we are not finished. There's plenty of other areas we can do that with. We have very high green space requirements for all of our developments. These are just a few of the things that we have done. So what do I want to address next? Well, we've talked about those tonight. Burning. I want to end burning from land clearing and development. Flood zones. I want to make safer and better development in our flooded areas. I want to revisit a tree protection ordinance.
I think that's time, yes, sir.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Mr. McHugh. We'll move on now to Mr. Frank Pendleton. Mr. Pendleton, your closing statement. You have 3 minutes, sir.
Most of the people in this room have had a job review at one time or another. Some of you may be retired, some of you may be working. But at some point in your career, you sat down with your manager and they looked at your performance. And they talked about all the things that you did well during the course of that year. And then they talked about some of the things that you needed to improve on. Well, in the United States, we have the perfect form of government because you as the voters get to do the performance reviews on the town council. By casting your vote, you get to determine whether they've done the job the way you want it done. So you have to ask yourself, are you happy with the overcongestion? Are you happy with the building? Are you happy with the traffic on 17? Are you happy with the burning? Because everything becomes an issue at election time, and they forget about us the other 3 years and 9 months. So if you're happy with the way things are, God bless you, I encourage you to vote for the incumbents. But if you're not, then I ask you to vote for me, because I want to be the champion for change, and I want to put the power back in the hands of the people. I want to host open forums. I want to hear the issues directly from you, and I want us to solve them together. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. We'll move on now to Ms. Waleed. Ms. Waleed, you have 3 minutes for your closing statement, ma'am.
Okay, I have 3 questions. Are you happy where we are now? Is this what you expected? And how do we move forward? We need solutions to overbuilding, strained infrastructure, and environment encroachment. I'm looking to listen to the community. I'm looking to listen to new ideas, because you may have something that I don't have. And I'm looking for us to move forward as a community. I don't want people driving through Leland. I want people to stop and see how wonderful this town is and to use our amenities. I also don't want people that live here to say, this is not what I signed up for. I'm tired of this. And I'm thinking about moving on to another community. I don't want that. That hurts my heart. So we need solutions so that we can move forward together. And that's why I'm looking for your vote to get that done. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. And now we'll close this out with Mr. Heyer. Mr. Heyer, your closing statement. You have 3 minutes, sir.
Yes, hi, good evening. First, I'd like to thank Sue Ann and Kate, Julia, and Mara, and Nikolai for helping us get this together this evening, because you guys did a great job putting this together. When it comes to the town council, there is more work to be done. Frankly, there is more work to be done. We are in a fight to restore confidence in the town council for the town of Leland. I'd like to see more two-way communication. I'd like to see town hall meetings. I want to see us vote to stop open burning. And last, I want to keep taxes low and fair for everybody in the town. My name's Leland Heyer. I would be honored to serve with any of you, and it would be an honor to serve you all. Thank you.
Y'all give him a hand, please.